first at 9. This is Other Derana 24/7.
Sri Lanka to finalize 3 trade pacts before June. New chairman appointed for Police Commission. European Union clarifies that only 27 international conventions apply for GSP+. New vehicle leasing scheme effective from today. Hello there, good evening everyone. I'm Dasaman Premathunga and thank you for joining us on News Tonight here on Other Derana 24/7. Let's begin with the local news. PH Manathunga has been appointed the new chairman of the National Police Commission. Manathunga received his appointment letter from President Maithripala Sirisena this afternoon. Manathunga's appointment follows the resignation of Professor Siri Hettige from the chairmanship of the Police Commission due to a long overseas teaching commitment. President Maithripala Sirisena today convened a special discussion to look into the preparations at ministerial level to provide essential relief to the people affected by the drought. The President is instructed to appoint a special committee comprising secretaries of the Ministries of Power and Energy, Mahavali and Water Supply to make quick decisions in the process of providing relief to the people. Meanwhile, addressing an event in Colombo, the President called the general public to see the opportunity for development amidst prevailing droughts. The President pointed out that Sri Lankans have previously experienced the consequences of natural disasters and faced these challenges successfully. Sri Lanka will finalize 3 trade agreements with China, Singapore and India before June this year. This was revealed at a media briefing held on the sidelines of the annual meetings of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and Ministers Malik Samaravikrama, Ravi Karunanayake and Harin Fernando are attending the forum.
On the Asian side, we are now dealing and negotiating firstly with India, free trade agreement for a further comprehensive and a deeper trade agreement, the economic and technology cooperation agreement with India. Within it, we also envisage that it will be possible for us to have separate arrangements with the 5 southern states of India. That will be Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which together with Sri Lanka is a $500 billion regional economy and has the prospects of even going up to $1 trillion. We are also having negotiations with Singapore and will complete that soon. We will also be talking with Japan on FTA with Japan. Together with this, Sri Lanka government is now also undertaking the structural reforms which will be announced in February and March, which will make it easier to do business in Sri Lanka for new tax incentives, the macroeconomic stabilization program with IMF. Similarly, a second area of development will be the Northeastern Economic Development Corridor around Trincomalee, where the Trincomalee Harbour will be developed. We have a contract with Sabana Jurong of Singapore for the planning out of Trincomalee. We are talking with India to come into the development of the Trincomalee port.
We have made good progress with our negotiations with China, Singapore and India. We hope to finalize these trade agreements before June this year, which will result in us having a market access of over 2.5 billion people. The problem we have had is that our exports have been to the traditional markets, USA, UK, few countries in Europe and India. But we need to now diversify the markets as well as diversify the products.
Prime Minister, now China has committed, they say they would invest $5 billion within the next 5 years. What are the other areas from where you're expecting investments?
Well, India will be investing. We are discussing that further with India. There will be Japanese investments coming in. We hope there will be Korean investments coming in, but the uncertain political situation in Korea at the moment is not conducive for any investment promotion. Singapore, there will be from other countries also. And then we feel even the European investments will come in. It's a process, so let's start with what we have.
The forum was attended by Chinese President Xi Jinping, making history as the first Chinese leader to attend the World Economic Forum. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Davos. They discussed on Chinese investments in Sri Lanka. The Prime Minister also met Swiss President Doris Leuthard and engaged in talks on Sri Lanka's National Economic Programme and Sustainable Development Plan. Yesterday, global superstar Shakira, attending the World Economic Forum, spoke about the necessity of concentrating on feeding, educating, and caring for underprivileged children.
It's mostly a reflection, I hope that it's a reflection on the global understanding of the importance of investing in early childhood development. Right. I hope that it means that the issue is becoming top of mind for everyone. The kids that we attend to, most of them belong to families that have been directly affected by violence, that have lost even family members, so you can imagine
The government has decided to cancel the lease agreement on the Voice of America premises at Iranavilla in Puttalam. Cabinet approval was granted to the proposal to take over the much-debated land which belonged to the American Embassy in Colombo. The land of about 166 hectares in Iranavilla Puttalam was leased out to the American Embassy in 1991 to establish the Voice of America transmission station in Sri Lanka. The embassy had informed that they wished to hand over the said land and other assets in that land to the Sri Lankan government before the lease agreement expired. Accordingly, Cabinet approved the proposal made by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in his capacity as the Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs to take over the said land and assets by terminating the agreement. Meanwhile, the Anti-Corruption Front cites as undemocratic the government's move to dissolve the director board of Lanka Coal Company. Now, advisor to the Anti-Corruption Front, Kirti Tennakon, said this, speaking to media today.
මේ යහපාලනයයි කියගන්න වෙනසක් කරන්නට එක්වෙන්න කිව්ව ආණ්ඩුව.
Yesterday, the Yahapalana government, which came to power with the intention of instilling good governance in the country, removed the chairman who tried to put an end to fraud. The Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy is to bring in 18 vessels of coal through an agreement which was pronounced null and void by the Supreme Court. Last week, a letter of credit was sent to bring one ship. They had to pay $10 additionally for coal, making a loss of around $120 million for the country. The minister, secretary and the deputy secretary have thus fined the people. It was Bhattakota who suggested to the minister to remove the chairman. This is an unfair move.
සභාපතිවරයා ඉලක්ක කරන්නේ. මේක කැකිල්ලේ නඩු තීන්දුව.
The expelled chairman of the Lanka Coal Company, Maitri Gunaratne, challenges the Power and Renewable Energy Minister's move to dissolve the board of directors of the company yesterday. He alleged that the secretary to the ministry had misled the Cabinet of Ministers.
The coal tender has been one of the biggest frauds perpetrated against the people of this country. When the lowest bidder had been chosen by the technical evaluation committee, that was completely disregarded and it was given to the fifth highest bidder. Then what happened was the lowest bidder went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court went into the full case and pronounced its judgment. And in the judgment, it clearly says that the conduct of government officials shocks the conscience of court. All known laws, regulations and guidelines have been violated. The process is null and void. That the special cabinet appointed procurement committee has misled the cabinet. The secretary Bhattakota has misled the cabinet. Even after the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, Suren Bhattakota was trying to do is, he was trying to award the tender to the same company. I was opposed to this. I wrote to Suren Bhattakota and very clearly informed him that he is violating the law. He is violating all procedure. He paid scant respect to those letters.
Secretary and the minister and the cabinet, the president, the prime minister make decision on some bigger transaction. So then if something wrong with the procurement process, due to the mistakes and lapses in the tender document, that is responsible of the Lanka Coal Company. Vaityakundatha cannot say the tender which was approved by the technical committee, tender board, and the cabinet. So Maitri Gundaratne say something wrong. I don't know about this, which is not the correct thing. He has to follow the government policy. But if he knows whether cost is high or low, why should the government appoint technical committees? Why tender board? By the cabinet. So TEC will recommend, tender board to look at it, approve, cabinet will approve. Auditor General give this much a big report. And Auditor General question whether this company has any purpose. I can't just wait. So I must take action. I didn't want to protect the interests of one individual or my job. It's not. If, as Maitri Gundaratne say, this is the responsibility of the ministry secretary, then there is a serious question, why the Lanka Coal Company there? What is their role?
Former leader of the Jatika Hela Urume, Venerable Dr. Omalpe Sobitha commends Venerable Athuraliya Ratanathero's decision to act as an independent member of parliament. Speaking at a media briefing in Kaluthara today, Venerable Sobitha opined that it will be more effective if Ratanathero resigns as a parliamentarian.
අතුරුලී රත්න හාමුදුරුවෝ කියන්නේ 2015 ජනවාරි මාසයේ 8 වෙනිදා සිදු වුණු දේශපාලන පෙරළියේ පුරෝගාමියා.
Venerable Athuraliya Ratanathero is the pioneer of the political transition that took place on January 8, 2015. 2 years on, we can see that the current government is under criticism over their shortcomings. In such situation, I admire the decision taken by Venerable Ratanathero to act independently. He did it for a good cause. His cause is to protect the country from disastrous consequences of the government's decision on economic and constitutional amendments. However, his decision to be independent will be more meaningful if he gives up his parliament membership. If not, the real meaning of being independent will not be achieved.
නුත් නිදහස් වෙලා ස්වාධීන වීමෙනුයි. එසේ නොවුනොත් ස්වාධීනත්වය කියන අර්ථය නිසි ලෙස අර්ථවත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
We take a short break now. We'll be back with more local news. Welcome back. The European Union today reiterated that the ratification and implementation of 27 international conventions signed by successive Sri Lankan governments are the only criteria on which Sri Lanka's application to rejoin the GSP Plus scheme will be assessed. The conventions relate to international human rights, labour rights, environmental standards and good governance.
The EU's Special Incentive Arrangement for Sustainable Development and Good Governance, GSP Plus, is part of unilateral tariff preferences of the European Union in favour of developing countries. The Generalised Scheme of Preferences Plus facility grants full removal of tariffs on over 66% of tariff lines covering a wide array of products, including textiles and fisheries. The European Union says that the GSP Plus regulation sets strict and clear criteria for granting GSP Plus. The EU communiqué said that the applicant must firstly meet economic criteria and subsequently the country must ratify the 27 international conventions required under GSP Plus. An applicant country must thereby ratify the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Convention on the Rights of the Child, Convention against Torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, International Convention on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide 1948, Freedom of Association and Protection of the Right to Convention 1948, Right to Organize and Collective Bargaining Convention, Minimum Age Convention, Worst Forms of Child Labour Convention, Equal Remuneration Convention, Discrimination, Employment and Occupation Convention, Forced Labour Convention, Abolition of Forced Labour Convention, Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Convention on Biological Diversity, Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to the Convention on Biological Diversity, Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Waste and their Disposal, Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, United Nations Convention on Psychotropic Substances, United Nations Convention against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances, and finally the United Nations Convention against Corruption. The EU further states that once a country is granted GSP+, the EU must monitor that it abides by the commitments, ensure their effective implementation, and comply with reporting requirements.
Still in business news, the new vehicle leasing scheme proposed by the 2017 budget is effective from today. The Ministry of Finance, issuing a statement, says that under the new scheme, the loan-to-value ratio when leasing a motor car, van or SUV will be 50% of the total value. The lease value for three-wheelers will be 25% of the total value. However, when leasing lorries and heavy vehicles, 90% of the total value is entitled for leasing. The Ministry of Finance says that transport service providers in the tourism sector will be able to obtain leasing for the total value of the vehicle. The Colombo Stock Exchange plunged further today. However, the S&P SL20 index was able to recover into green territory. We now have the stock market update.
The benchmark all-share price index lost 1.51 points to close at 6,185.01, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index gained 5.93 points to close at 3,497.27. The turnover was 171.4 million rupees with 6.5 million shares changing hands in 1,960 trades. The market capitalization at the end of the day was 2,726.35 billion rupees. Top 5 gainers of the day were Lancome Developments, Singaputra Finance Preference Shares, Tess Agro Non-Voting, Asia Asset Finance and Renuka Holdings Non-Voting, while the top 5 losers were SNB Leasing Non-Voting, SNB Leasing, Gestetner, Radiant James, Acme Printing and Packagings. Today's foreign purchases were 14.16 million rupees and foreign sales were 84.74 million rupees. There was one crossing and the crossing's turnover was 60.38 million rupees.
Let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies. Still in local news, and something very interesting which we never think of. Now, while the inauguration of the Moragahakanda Reservoir project has been lauded for its value as a source of water supply to surrounding villages, we show you a different aspects of the project which many of us never thought of. This is the story of the lone cry of so many who are going to lose their houses without any compensation, and the silent wail of the thousands of innocent animals trapped due to the opening of the new sluice gate. The Moragahakanda project commenced in 2007, marking a milestone in Sri Lanka's irrigation system. The main aim was to provide citizens of Rajarata with clean drinking water and to add 25 more megawatts to the national grid. However, the people of Moragahakanda, who will lose their property due to the project, complain that they have not yet been provided with new houses and lands as compensation.
When we go to the authorities, they ask us to go to our parents. How can we go to our parents? They say they won't give us anything. I'm still living here. I will not go anywhere until we are given compensation. Where are we supposed to go? If this land will be filled with water, we will drown and die. We are still at our home because we have nowhere to go. We don't mind if we die because of this dam. We will not go anywhere until we are given solutions.
While most of the families have left their houses already, 3 families remain unable to leave their villages. Yesterday, one sluice gate was opened and the Kambarava village will be the first to go underwater, and consequently 6 villages will disappear from the Sri Lankan map. On the other hand, with rising water levels, wild animals are also in danger. The National Zoo along with the Wildlife Department have joined hands to save these animals. Two professors from the departments of zoology of the University of Peradeniya and University of Colombo have joined the mission to assure these animals their right to live. Among many who arbitrarily destroy forests and wildlife, it is a commendable effort to save the lives of these animals. Here's a bit of news for you cycling fans. Australian Ricky Porte won stage 2 of the Tour Down Under and took a 20-second lead in the general classification. The BMC rider went on the attack on the final climb and managed to defend off the challenge of Izaguirre and Esteban Chaves, who became second and third. Porte won the 148.5 kilometer stage from Stirling to Paracombe in a time of 3 hours and 46 minutes, 16 seconds ahead of Izaguirre and Chaves. Yesterday, the race organisers were forced to cut short the opening stage due to the temperatures rising above 40 degrees Celsius. Today was far more pleasant for the peloton, with temperatures averaging around 25 degrees Celsius. At the opening stage yesterday, Caleb Evans was able to defeat Danny Van Poppel and cross the finishing line at a time of 3 hours and 24 minutes. In international news, a Nigerian military jet has mistakenly bombed a camp for displaced people in the northeast and killed at least 52 people. The Nigerian Red Cross has confirmed that 6 of its aid workers were killed, and Doctors Without Borders said that over 200 people have been injured.
President Muhammadu Buhari, whose army was planning to fight Boko Haram militants, expressed dismay and urged calm after the military has struck the refugee camp near the border to Cameroon, where it is engaged in what it calls the final push against Boko Haram. It is the first time that Nigeria's military has admitted to make such a mistake. The Red Cross spokeswoman Alexandra Maciejewicz said that dozens of volunteers that arrived on Tuesday to deliver food and medical aid have been killed by the attack. The Nigerian government assured that the administration would offer help to the state of Borno in attending to this regrettable operational mistake. Boko Haram has stepped up attacks in the last few weeks as the end of the rainy season has enabled its fighters to move more easily in the bush.
Time to take a look at the weather, which is on all our minds these days. Rain is expected, particularly in northern and eastern parts of the island during the next few days. Now, the prevailing cold weather is likely to temporarily decrease. Until then, fair weather is expected to continue, mainly over most parts of the island. Misty conditions can be expected at some places of the island during the morning, and particularly in the western, Sabaragamu, southern and central provinces. Fairly strong winds at times, about 50 kilometers per hour, can be expected over the country. Time now to take a look at the city-by-city weather forecast. And that's a wrap of tonight's news on Ada Derana 24/7. Thank you very much for your company. For the very latest and 24 hours a day, just log on to www.adaderana.lk or like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. I'm Dasman Premathanga. Thank you for watching. Good night.
This is Ada Derana, and you're watching Ada Derana 24/7.